Good morning, folks. I just wanted to jump on here and do a quick garden tour. Felt a little inspired on this cool summer morning, so let's take a look at what I got going on. So here in our long bed along our fence, you can see there's kind of a few phases of things. First, we have this gorgeous marigold, and we have our tomatoes. So this is a chocolate cherry. We've really been liking this trellising method, straight up to the support. We just use those PVC elbows. Make sure you paint them first because they're not UV resistant, and some T-posts. It works out pretty good. We got a chocolate cherry. This is Barry's Crazy Cherry. Not a super huge fan of the flavor, but I like having a yellow cherry. This is the Super Sweet 100, and this is a new tomato to me, the red centiflora. It's supposed to be a multiflora like the Barry's Crazy Cherry, but alas. And in here we have planted some basil, some marigolds in the back, some celery, there's a leek, some sweet alyssum, which we hope is a ground cover. This is a cabbage that I didn't think was going to do anything because the top was, I planted this last fall. I didn't think anything was going to happen, but it's making little heads. So we'll try and do something with those. This is the Crimson Giant from M.I. Gardner, the one he had for 85 years. Not he had for 85 years, but 85-year-old seed. I'm not sure what this one is. I know I've got a Cherokee Purple. I've got an Amish Paste, one of my super favorites. Paul Robeson. This one's called the Black Queen. This is a Brad Gates tomato. And you can see here, this is really densely planted. We had a bunch of arugula there. The arugula is kind of gone to seed. We've got another celery in here. We've got a basil. We've got some lettuces that are bolting. Some celery in the back. Obviously, the huge dill. The alyssum. The borage, which the borage is voluntary. I always forget how giant it is. Look at that. I'm pretty sure this is mammoth dill. None of my beans came up on this side of the trellis, so I need to replant that. Over here, the beans didn't come up on this half, so I just planted a bitter melon. Well, it was like over a week ago, but it has finally germinated. We've got some dianthus that was looking terrible. And on over here. In here we have some Egyptian walking onions. A dandelion has clearly gone to seed. And these are our peppers. We've got a couple of fish peppers, a peppercini. This is a Buena Mulata. And you can see all of these walking onions. I'll tell you, once you just plant one, I got one from the farmer's market that had a little bit of root on it, and I planted it, and we've been in the walking onions since. We've got some kale. I don't think I mentioned earlier in the bed, there's a whole little patch of kale. Dinosaur kale. This is something called Premier Kale, which I'm not a huge fan of because it has these kind of like, I don't know if you can see, but kind of like prickly bits. It's fine for cooking, juicing, all that, but probably won't grow it again. Red Russian kale is one of my favorites. We have some more peppers, some carrots. Here's another leek. Here's a leek that's doing well. Lots of peppers. These I saved. No, that's not it. A couple of these peppers are guajillo peppers, which I saved from the dried smoked peppers you buy at the grocery store. So we'll see how those turn out. I'm still holding out hope that my Brussels sprouts do something. If you know something about Brussels sprouts, let me know. My first time growing that. We've had 100-degree weather. This Savoy cabbage is heading up, looking beautiful. Some marigolds, some sunflowers. Sorry for the dogs barking. Here's a sunflower blooming. So here's our other side garden. Look at these giant sunflowers. All of these sunflowers are volunteers, even the ones over here. So we've got our garden tower with lots of beans, some celery, which some of my celery is doing this. Does anyone know what that is? Why is it curling like that? It seems like the inside leaves are okay. And so we've got some bok choy that's going to seed. We've got one of our green stalk towers out. There were ants in it. There are ants in this tower. We've got an ant problem. But all the plants seem to be doing fine. This beautiful rose bush is about to explode with balloons. We've got some more basil. This is an Armenian white cucumber. I really hope it does well. I've heard such great things. I haven't had a lot of luck in growing it. Some volunteer holy basil, some more volunteer borage. We like to mulch with like plant material that's died back, and so we did that with the one giant amaranth that we grew last year, and so we've got a ton of volunteer amaranth in this bed, which is not a terrible thing, as the cucumber beetles seem to prefer this to the cucumber plants. A big tall marigold, a really tiny cucumber plant, this cucumber plant. You can see we've got a sunflower down due to the dog, which if you haven't met him yet, hey, here he is, our new pup. Well, we've had him almost a year. Here's some beautiful cucumber flowers. I'm just kind of letting it grow wherever it wants. I've got some volunteer tomatoes. If I have a picture, I'll insert it here, but this entire bed was full of volunteer tomatoes. A few years ago, our trellis fell down and cherry tomatoes were everywhere, so I'm pretty sure these are all cherry tomatoes. Hopefully they're varieties that I like, and I'm kind of letting them do their thing. We've got some zinnias, which also volunteered, some celery. Boss. Look how awesome that celery is. This is a Kajari melon, and some more volunteer tomatoes. If you look over here, we've got another sunflower. We've got these two pots which have this red currant tomato. Look how big it is. So a fun story is I ordered this seed for these tomatoes thinking I was ordering seeds for currant bushes. So we've got these tiny little tomatoes, which are good. The first one's kind of getting ripe. This one is looking terrible. I'm very likely going to pull that out. We just don't need a bunch of tomatoes like this, but maybe not. This one's looking very hungry, and that's one of the reasons. In this bucket up here, we have some compost tea brewing. We're going to feed all these plants. Our elephant ear, just some flowers. Strawberries, which seem to be making a comeback. Does anybody know what this is? With these affected leaves. lemon balm. Here's our green stalk. I have effectively planted flowers, a lot of basil, things like that in here. This is red veined sorrel, which we just eat as a green. I didn't realize this is a perennial. So I've got some of that. I'm likely going to transplant that somewhere else. I've got some amaranth, the kind that you use for salad green. Some celery, some other things, and strawberries in the top, which I'm concerned about that because they seem to be getting that as it rust. Anyhow, that's our green stalk. I will say I prefer the garden tower to the green stalk, mostly because you can compost in the garden tower, and once it's watered well, it stays moist more easily than the green stalk. So here we've got our lavender, which we're in a drought like much of the country, and so it's been challenging to keep everything healthy. This is a giant allium we're hoping to save seeds from. We heard that it was difficult, that's why we want to. We've got a happy little zinnia here, celery along the front, peppers behind. This is the Buena Mulata. My husband is a huge fan of that one, so we grow a lot of that. He uses it a lot in ramen. Now see, here's the celery doing this over here, but the rest of these are fine. So more pepper plants. Got a lemon balm that's struggling, I just transplanted. And if you look here, the mighty tromboncino squash. And we measured this one that's blooming, this sunflower that's blooming up here. And I believe it was 11 feet tall. It is huge. And I've just been keeping an eye out for the squash bugs, cucumber beetles, all that. Here's a squash we have growing. We're going to try and eat these more as green, like you would a zucchini. That's what we're going to try and do. This is the squash that I can grow. It's resistant to the vine borer and to the squash bugs. They're not as interested because it's not a Peppo variety. So the tromboncino is one I'll grow every year. Here are the radicchio, however you say that. This one is already bolting. And this one, it looks like it's about to. We've never grown those. We also have echinacea back here. We just had the one echinacea that I started from seed a few years ago, and it has reseeded. Echinacea is native to here, so it grows really well. We have another volunteer tomato. I've got some Swiss chard over here. Some peppers back here. That's supposed to be a mammoth cabbage, so we'll see what happens. And I'm pretty sure this is supposed to be a Romanesco broccoli. I don't think that's going to be happening in our 100-degree days, but it seems to be growing fine. Over here, this is mostly empty. I've got some collard greens in that pot that are not doing well. This is a tomatillo, 2 tomatillos that volunteered. My neighbor's beautiful garden over there. Mint in these buckets, which is flowering, which is a problem. Try and pluck it off. Really need to cut it way back, but you don't want it to flower and spread, as mint is very invasive. So this goji berry, which I'm really just trying to keep in this pot until we can move, but it looks really hungry, so I'm going to be feeding it some compost tea. I've got some garlic chives back here, some rosemary, some stinging nettle. This is stevia, which I'm trying for the first time. It's super cool. And then we're trying to do the compost. I have a friend who has given me some advice, and we're gonna try and compost. So behind the greenhouse, we just have all these happy sunflowers. This used to be a compost bin. And so we don't really grow food in it, but we enjoy the sunflowers. Don't think I mentioned the leeks here, and the scarlet runner bean. And there is a clematis. Hopefully it doesn't get, there's the clematis, but the clematis isn't going to get very big this year, so we planted some beans to go up on the trellis. Here we have some chive, some sedum, and this little planter. We have some verbena, which I love. It's not doing as well as I would hope. This nasturtium is really struggling also. We've got some lemongrass and just some happy petunias. So in our front yard we have some cannas, which a local, I'll call him a friend, gave us those. We've got some holy basil, some dandelions, some Thai basil. Really love these bachelor buttons. Aren't they gorgeous? Some calendula. This is a hollyhock that's struggling. I just noticed that I have some volunteer ground cherries, which I am stoked about. Got some irises tucked in there. And these are some dahlias, dinner plate dahlias that I'm hoping flower this year. And then over here we have just some bulbs that we had for the spring. This is marjoram, that's caraway, some basil, some oregano, some parsley going to seed, some sage that has flowered. This is lamb's ear back here, and our thyme, and our daylily, our rose, and here we have, this is our rosemary that overwintered. Kind of looks a little Frankensteinish, but it's a lot of rosemary. This is a liatris that's cultivated. This is called Prairie Blazing Star liatris, and this is the native variety, which is sort of wild. And then we just have our peach tree, which is desperately in need of pruning, and some comfort underneath. I just want to say thanks for coming along for my very imperfect garden tour, and I hope you enjoyed. Have a great day.